So the bottom line is the Democrats have enough votes to block the nomination through a filibuster, but the Republicans have enough votes to change the rules, so they need only 51 instead of 60 votes to confirm the nomination. That would be called the nuclear option. Well, this is confusing to a lot of people, so joining me now is former high school government teacher Jim Francis of Idaho Falls High School. Jim taught there from '88 to 2011, taught a little bit at ISU also after that, and won the Teacher of the Year Award in 1997, several other awards. So, Jim, we have to have you put on your teacher's hat again here to explain here what's going on. We have terms like filibuster, cloture, nuclear option. Let's just briefly talk about those. Tell us about this filibuster and cloture thing and how this is all related to this particular decision.
All right, so filibuster, the root word is piracy.
Ah, okay.
So it comes from French and Dutch, but anyway, the idea is you're stealing the chance to make a decision that's come before the Senate by continuing the debate, by continuing to talk. So the filibuster allows a minority in the Senate to stop Senate action on a particular issue until they can be shut down with a cloture vote, which right now requires 60 votes for a cloture.
Okay.
So in other words, you'd have to have 60 votes to get Neil Gorsuch approved.
Okay, to stop that filibuster, and they don't have those 60 votes, do they?
Depends on whether you can get everyone to be loyal.
That's true.
On the Democratic side and
they do have those 60 votes. But the Republicans don't have the votes.
The Republicans
for the
do
cloture,
not by themselves
the cloture
have
thing.
the votes.
Okay, and now this filibuster. This is interesting. I want to just play for our viewers just for a moment here. This was
Sam I am.
Senator Cruz.
That Sam I am. That Sam I am. I do not like that Sam I am. Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam I am. I do not like green eggs and ham.
Okay, so that we saw that from Ted Cruz. That was part of a filibuster a while back. Right. It wasn't over a Supreme Court nominee quite like this, but that gives you some idea of how they try to stall things, and they could just go on forever there. And so this nuclear option, explain that.
Well, I believe it's called a nuclear option because once the Senate changes a long-standing rule, then it's done. You're not going to go back. Mm-hmm. So here's the situation. In 2013, the nuclear option was used in part by the Democratic leadership. I refuse to say one person did this, but the Democratic leadership did that. And what has happened is now federal judges' appointments are done by a majority vote.
Of just 51.
Right, and you can't filibuster because if you have the majority, you can close the vote at 51 votes, and then you vote.
Okay.
So what is still standing is the filibuster power, if you would call it that, for a Supreme Court nominee. That has not been used yet. So if it is used by the Republican leadership now, then you would never go back to it. So it would mean that 51 votes in the Senate would always approve a president's nominee.
Forevermore.
Right, which makes it more and more risky for one party to take control without any bipartisanship. Mm-hmm. And that is not obviously what the Founding Fathers would have meant or could have meant, because they didn't anticipate this kind of intense party politics in the first place. They didn't want it. They all denounced it, even though they helped to create it. But they all denounced it. Yeah. And so what we have now is what Washington warned us about. We have extreme partisan politics.
George Washington,
yes,
warned us about.
Right.
Yeah, so this is an interesting situation. What are the downsides of, it's just 9 votes difference, 51 compared to 60, but why is that so significant?
I argue that the filibuster is a tool. Mm-hmm. And as we know, tools can be totally misused. And the filibuster was used to stop or slow down the Civil Rights Act of '64. But at the same time, tools are extremely handy. And in this way, I think they lead pressure to have bipartisan decisions made in the Senate. And to me, the best legislation is bipartisan. We are not a system that's very well designed for one party rule, and then it flips to the other party ruling and blocking whatever's coming out of their opponent.
Okay.
That is not good politics in America.
So if you need 60 votes to confirm a Supreme Court justice, you got to kind of reach across the aisle, and it may be someone a little bit more moderate,
Exactly.
from both perspectives.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's exactly because the Supreme Court justice is obviously there as a lifetime appointment. It's going to go beyond any current Congress, and it's going to go beyond the current president. That's the whole design of the system. And for sure, the Founding Fathers had no intention that a coalition of president and the Senate would take control of the judiciary branch and take all three branches into one political movement.
Okay.
That could not possibly be good government in a Democratic Republican.
Now, there are some people that agree that this would be a very dangerous precedent. Let's listen to, we have both a Democrat and a Republican right here saying that. Let's listen to Chuck Schumer, the Democrat, first.
We expect the majority leader to file cloture on a nomination that is doomed to fail. Senator McConnell would have the world believe that his hands are tied, that the only option after Judge Gorsuch doesn't earn 60 votes is to break the rules to change the rules. That could not be further from the truth. Every time in the history of this country that a Supreme Court nominee has failed to earn the necessary votes to pass the Senate, the answer has been to change the nominee, not the rules.
So that's Schumer's perspective, which we might expect from a Democrat. But listen now to Senator John McCain, what he said.
I think it was a dark day in the history of the United States Senate. It's going to happen, and it's interesting that Republicans were dead set against it when my former colleague Harry Reid invoked it with the judges, but now it seems to be okay. What we should have done is what we did in 2005, and that was a group of us got together, 14 of us, and said, look, we won't filibuster except under extraordinary conditions. And now we're so polarized now, including between the two leaders, Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer, that there's no communications anymore. But look, if you can do this with 51 votes, what do you think the next nominee is going to be like? And then what do you think is going to happen when eventually the Democrats are in the majority in the Senate? And that's going to happen sooner or later. I hope later.
So as a history teacher, Jim, having looked at this over the years, when's the last time we've been this divided or this polarized, maybe using Senator McCain's term?
Well, I mean, he mentioned the 2005 point, and I think that's a good place because at that point the Democrats were filibustering to prevent some of the appointments that George W. Bush had put in place. And so there was a threat on the Republican part to, at that point, do the nuclear option of making cloture at 51 votes. And 14 senators, 7 Democrats and 7 Republicans, obviously including McCain, sat down and said, okay, the Democrats said, well, we won't filibuster justices and judges, and the Republicans said, the 7 Republicans said, we will not use the nuclear option. A compromise. It's bipartisanship, and that's what they need to do right now. That's my view, and it's the only way that you can overcome it, you see, and it did begin with the Merrick Garland case. There's no doubt that the Democrats are upset because of that.
You wouldn't give us our nominee, so we won't give you yours, kind of. It's kind of the thought.
And how do you break that? That's the question, because
yes,
you can't break it as a Democrat because you have your base out there saying, hey, don't give in to this whole movement. And you have also at the same time, Republicans can't give in. It's going to take the courage of some people to not allow McConnell to quite do that, but to find a way to work around it like they did in 2005. It doesn't take a majority to do that. It only took 14 then. It could do the same thing again and work out a compromise because it's probably going to be Gorsuch approved. But it's got to be worked out in a bipartisan way.
Finally, as you look back in history to George Washington, like you were saying before, you say this isn't really what he had envisioned. What did he envision?
Well, Washington, not speaking of this directly, but Washington did envision where party politics in the extreme would be controlled by the people, and they were the one group, he said, that would prevent party politics from becoming the dominant element in our government. And I believe that we've reached the point that we should be rereading his words.
All right. Spoken like a true history teacher. I wish we all knew his words a little bit better. Maybe that's something we should read up on there. Thank you so much, Mr. Francis.
Okay,
Appreciate you joining us here.